Whoa, Jeff, did you feel that?
I did.
I felt like an earthquake.
We don't get many of those in New England, but they do happen. Just a few months ago, a 3.6 on the Richter scale hit southeastern Massachusetts. I remember it was enough to rattle the pots on my stove. We're 40 miles away.
Yeah, I remember that. Earthquakes scare me.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know how they do it. I mean, if it gets cloudy and windy, we know there's a storm coming.
Right.
We take shelter. But there's no warning for earthquakes. You could be driving over a bridge and suddenly it starts to shake. No, thank you.
No, I get it. And thankfully, New England isn't known for earthquakes. I mean, they happen, but usually not the big ones.
Still, this rumble felt a little different than an earthquake, like more isolated.
Well, Ray, we're walking along Cotton Road on the south side of Deerfield, New Hampshire, looking to solve an old mystery. Deerfield isn't overly prone to earthquakes these days, but maybe what we just heard and felt wasn't an earthquake at all. Maybe it was one of the infamous Deerfield Booms. I'm Jeff Belanger, and welcome to episode 185 of the New England Legends podcast. If you give us about 10 minutes, although we may need a little longer on this one, we'll give you something strange to talk about today.
And I'm Ray Auger. Deerfield, New Hampshire is the next stop on our mission to chronicle every legend in New England, one story at a time. We do that through this podcast, through our website, our super secret New England Legends Facebook group, and through the New England Legends television series that you can watch right now on Amazon Prime. We're a community of legend seekers. And did you know that many of our story leads come from you?
It's true.
We'd like to thank Dana Stewart for tipping us off to this week's story.
Yes, please do keep your ideas and feedback coming. We love it. But before we go searching for these mysterious subterranean booms, we want to take just a minute to tell you about our sponsor, Nuati Herbals. What was that?
That may have been my stomach this time.
Well, maybe you need to try some Calming the Storm tea from Nuati Herbals, Ray. This tea is a blend of ingredients meant to ease your tummy thunder. Here, take a look at what's in the blend.
Ooh, all right, I see it has ginger root, alfalfa leaf, chamomile flower, fennel seed, licorice root, and peppermint leaf, just to name some of the great stuff inside.
And the best part is that these natural ingredients make for great tasting teas.
Now, I've been drinking their teas and using some of their balms, soaps, and oils for months now. I really notice a difference in how I'm feeling and how I'm sleeping and living in general.
Yeah, I have too. Nothing like a warm cup of tea and a little self-care during these stressful and strange times. These are Native American-inspired products. Herbal remedies from Mother Earth. Please check out their website to see all the great products that we've been telling you about each week. And you legendary listeners get 20% off your order when you use the promo code LEGENDS20 at checkout. Visit nuatiherbals.com. That's Nuwati herbals with an S.com.
All right, Jeff, so we're in Deerfield, New Hampshire, looking for some kind of underground explosions?
Underground explosions, seismic activity, maybe some kind of mine, a secret underground UFO base. There's been a lot of ideas and theories floating out there.
Wow, that's quite a buffet of theories. All right, to figure this out, let's head back to 1838 and set this up. It's October of 1838, and we're taking a stroll on South Road in the southern part of Deerfield, New Hampshire. It's a crisp fall day. The skies are clear. You know, one of those perfect New England days.
What was that?
That must be one of those strange Deerfield booms we've been hearing about. They started in 1836 and obviously still happening.
Okay, it was loud.
It was.
The ground shook.
I felt that too.
But then it was over in just like a second or two.
Yeah.
So I'm no expert, but earthquakes don't do that. I mean, they go on a little longer, like 10 to 30 seconds longer.
Well, it's definitely weird. And we're not the only people to notice either. Enter Josiah Butler, the postmaster of South Deerfield, but also a former member of Congress and a judge. He begins to document these explosions, or booms.
The reports have been heard in the daytime as often, and more so, than in the night. They are as loud as a heavy cannon fired near the house, with no reverberation and little roll. Last fall, some of the inhabitants were riding in a wagon when an explosion was heard, and they saw the stone wall, which was apparently quite compact, fall over on one side of the way, and a second after upon the other.
So half the wall fell in one direction and the other half of the wall fell in the other.
While this may seem like a geological curiosity to us who are just passing through, folks in Deerfield, they're scared.
I can imagine. I mean, if something like this happens just one time, you could say it was a minor earthquake, or maybe someone was firing a cannon nearby and you weren't close enough to see it. But these strange booms continue to happen. As Postmaster Butler explained, they happen during the day and at night, but sometimes they're big enough to cause damage.
An explosion about a year and a half since shook and jarred the earth in buildings. Another, last November, shook buildings, window glass, stoves in houses, opening inner doors and causing clocks to strike irregularly, and tumbled a stone wall within 20 rods of my house on the South Road in Deerfield, and greatly alarmed the inhabitants. Another explosion on the 1st of July last, which was succeeded as rapidly as a field piece could be discharged by 10 of more or less reports, was about midnight and aroused everyone from sleep. These 3 reports are the loudest which have ever been heard. The explosions have increased with the last 2 years and have been heard in winter as well as in other seasons of the year.
These strange explosions began in 1834 and have been ongoing. There's no seasonality to them either. Folks in Deerfield are really nervous. They're on edge. You never know when the next one will happen.
And any explosion strong enough to knock over a stone wall is strong enough to knock over a person or a house.
Sure, yeah.
It's not a stretch to think that your life or your children's lives may be in danger from this invisible underground stalker.
It's August 27th, 1846, when a letter by someone who signs themselves only as, quote, a native of Deerfield, is published in various newspapers around the region. Now, the letter describes some of these booming phenomena in town, and some of the observations made about them. The closing paragraph reads, and I quote, "These few observations have been made in the hope that they will draw the attention of the scientific, who, if they can show some natural cause for so curious a fact, will calm the fears of the inhabitants and satisfy many of the curious."
So yeah, folks are scared and looking for help with an explanation. Postmaster Josiah Butler continues.
The explosions are generally abrupt and very much resemble the blasting of rocks, and have been felt from 2 to 3 miles by the jar of the buildings at the same instant that the sound is heard. But 1 or 2 of the greatest appeared to myself and some others continuous, something like the earthquake which was felt yesterday, the 25th at 5 o'clock in the morning, in this state. And I learn, in some, if not all parts of Massachusetts, striking the easterly end of the house and passing off from northeast to southwest.
Now that sounds like an earthquake.
It does. It was felt 100 miles away, so maybe that one event can be explained, but most of the other booms are more isolated. Josiah explains.
These explosions are heard in all parts of the town, and also in some of the adjacent towns, especially in the northern part of the town of Candia, to the extent of 5 or 6 miles in every direction from the place from which the reports are supposed to originate. On the southeastern part of Deerfield, near South Road, so-called, the explosions are the loudest, and the jar of the buildings is felt more than in any other part of the town. And I have therefore concluded that the reports are produced by some cause existing between or near the mountains and South Road.
We should point out that mountains is a strong word. This region of New Hampshire isn't very mountainous. Josiah Butler writes the mountains being referred to are the Patuckaway Mountain and the few ridges around it. The Patuckaway is a 1,000-foot peak that sits on Deerfield's eastern town line that's shared with Nottingham. But the strange thing is, folks in Nottingham don't experience these explosions.
The reports are scarcely heard in the center of Nottingham, 3 miles east of the mountains. On the west of these mountains, or about 2 miles west of them, and near a small river called Lamprey River, the explosions are the greatest or loudest and most felt. The shock in November last, which tumbled down a strong wall on the South Road, was about as great near the said river as on the South Road. The locations of the explosion cannot be determined by the sounds so well as by the jar of earth and buildings. The jar is not felt more than 3 miles, but the reports are heard from 5 to 6 miles in every direction from the place where the explosions are supposed to come. About 20 years ago, iron ore was dug near the Lamprey River. But whether there is combustible matter in the earth which causes the explosions, I do not know.
By 1846, these mysterious Deerfield booms are happening as frequently as once per month, and sometimes even once per week. Though no injuries are reported, folks know it's a matter of time before someone is in the wrong place at the wrong time. But then, in the latter part of 1846, the booms, they stop. After 12 years, the phenomenon seems to end, because no more booms are reported. And that brings us back to today.
Okay, a couple of important historical tidbits worth noting. Nitroglycerin wasn't discovered until 1847, and dynamite not until 1867.
All right, got it. So these booms couldn't have been that.
No, however, people did use kegs of black powder to try to blow up rocks, fallen trees, and even houses of parliament for centuries before 1834.
Sure, but if somebody was blowing powder kegs close enough to knock over a stone wall, you'd see smoke or fire from that, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right? Like there goes crazy Uncle Jedediah with his black powder again.
Right, exactly. So we can rule that out. Today, we're walking along Cotton Road in South Deerfield, right where it crosses the Lamprey River and intersects with Raymond Road, because this is about the area of the hotspot identified in the newspaper articles all those years ago. But, nothing around here looks weird to me.
Nah, me neither.
So we decided to make a call for help. We got on the phone and reached out to a higher authority.
I'm Wally Bothner. I've taught at the University of New Hampshire since 1967. Retired, but still thinking geological plots.
He's Professor Emeritus Earth Sciences from the university. We gave him all the newspaper articles we gathered from the 1840s on these mysterious Deerfield booms and asked for his opinion.
But first, we asked him, what is an earthquake?
Well, in very simple terms, it's a release of energy in the earth, often shallow, but sometimes very deep. So you first get that shaking, bing, 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 bing. That's the P wave. A P, which is a punch, pressure wave. An S, which is an up and down snake-like motion. And the surface wave is a sidewinder kind of snake motion that's restricted to the horizontal plane on the surface. So those three are characteristic of all earthquakes.
So you've got the initial release of energy that may or may not make a booming sound. Then you've got up and down waves like on an ocean. And then you've got side-to-side waves on the surface. Put that all together, and if you're close enough to the epicenter, then you've got a big problem depending on how large that earthquake is.
A force like that can easily knock down a stone wall or even a building. But earthquakes aren't localized. I mean, the epicenter's localized, but a quake large enough to knock down a wall would also be felt like 100 miles away.
Professor Bothner explained the reason we don't get earthquakes here in New England, like, say, our friends in California. It's because California is located right on the edge of a big tectonic plate. So there's more stress as those plates grind against each other. So New England is more in the middle of one of those large plates. Now, the biggest quakes are going to happen on the edges. But he explains we do have various faults in our region. But they're hundreds of millions of years in age and are well sealed, so they're not visible at the surface.
He explained we still get small quakes here in New England, like the one we experienced a few months ago, because our plate is still indeed under stress as it slowly slides westerly. Plus, the rock beneath us isn't uniform.
And wherever there is a strong difference in rock type in the Earth's crust, not what you see necessarily on the surface, but down under the ground, stress may get concentrated where there's a big difference in rock type. And when that stress exceeds the strength of the rocks on either side or on that boundary, there will be a slight amount of displacement, and that displacement will propagate seismic energy.
Seismic energy, better known as some kind of earthquake.
Right.
So, Professor Bothner, given what you've read in the old newspaper articles and how the events were described, do you have any idea what kind of geological event could have caused the Deerfield booms?
No. That's the short answer. I've kind of been sort of racking my brain since you sent me the articles, and I've dug out all of the most recent geologic maps that I have of that neck of the woods. I had a student finish a thesis in the Mount Patuckaway area, covered Deerfield, so we know the rock types that are there. He didn't do the superficial geology, but when I located Cotton Road and Raymond Road and the Lamprey on Google Earth, it's very close to a huge gravel pit. There's nothing geological there that tickles my funny bone that would be the site of a seismic event. There are two mapped faults. One sort of in the area of Raymond and another one on the other side of Deerfield, but they are not known to have moved for 170 or 180 million years.
So no smoking gun there, but there still is one possibility, according to Professor Bothner.
The only thing that one could argue would be that there is some wonderful old volcanic center called the Mount Patuckaway complex. It's a circular, 120 million year old relic volcanic center, no longer volcanic active, of course. But the rocks that comprise it, and that really is only a mile or so from Deerfield Center. But that has a very unique rock type. It's different from all of the surrounding ones. And there is a hypothesis, well, essentially it's a hole in the plate hypothesis. You can take a paper punch and cut a hole in either a piece of cloth or a piece of waxed paper and pull it apart a little bit. And you'll see wrinkling occur in the material, or a rip develop propagating from the hole that you cut in it. And so there is a potential for stress to be concentrated around this hole. And if the hole happens to be filled with a different rock type as the Mount Patuckaway complex is, that might be something that would allow stresses to accumulate there greater than on either side. And if one of the rock bodies slipped relative to the other at depth, then the energy would be released and you'd have a small earthquake. Now, whether it's something like that would propagate enough wave form to shake a stone wall or make a big boom, I have no idea.
So almost like the edge of a tectonic plate, but on a tiny local scale. I mean, it's just a theory.
Right.
But in reality, Professor Bothner isn't sure it could explain 12 years of booms that suddenly stopped.
It's a real puzzle. I don't know.
Granted, this is a cold case. The last reports of the Deerfield Booms was 175 years ago, so it's not like today's experts can interview anybody or take any relevant readings because there were no devices in place to record the data back then. But when the experts don't know, legend and lore take over.
And then there's talk of secret underground mines, UFO bases, land trolls, or anything else you can imagine to try to explain something that just can't be explained. And I think that's our cue to leave.
I love it when a mystery can hang around for close to 2 centuries and still make us scratch our heads. And we love it when you legendary listeners hang around with us. If you're ready to get even more involved, please consider joining our Patreon patrons. These folks are the backbone of everything we do. For just $3 per month, they get early access to new episodes, plus bonus episodes and content that no one else gets to hear. Just head over to patreon.com/New England Legends to sign up.
And be sure to subscribe to our podcast because It's free, and we don't want you to miss a thing.
Right.
And we'd love it if you'd post a review or tell a friend or two about our show. The more people who share these stories, the more new stories that come in for all of us to enjoy.
We'd like to thank Michael Legge for lending his voice acting talent this week. A big thank you to Professor Wally Bothner for lending his expertise to the story. And our theme music is by John Judd.
Until next time, remember, the bizarre is closer than you think.